Part of the objective of this class is for the students to be able to analyze art. And by that I mean to be able to look at a piece of art and make an informed decision as to its validity as a piece of art. To do that, we have to understand the language of art, the elements and principles of design. They are line, color, value, texture, shape, and space. The principles of design are balance, pattern, rhythm, movement, contrast, emphasis, and unity. The visual elements help us to analyze our visual experiences. Those 6 terms are used also as the fundamental language for the discussion about art. And the piece of art that you see to the right here, the artist has used interesting color here to define the shape of a cat, lines to help us understand that this is a piece of wood, shapes to also help us to understand those are musical notes. Outline here looks like, poof of smoke. So taking all those together, we kind of get a sense that this may be, unless we've done some research on what the artist really intended this to be, we get a sense of an explosion because everything seems to be radiating out, falling apart from the inside out to these edges. Maybe there's some tears here. So through that very, very simple analysis of this art, just describing it and making some observations because of that analysis, we get a sense of what the artist is trying to convey. And that's what we're going to be talking about this semester. What is it that the artist is trying to say? What message are they trying to convey? We're going to start with line. That's pretty basic. Line is the path of a moving point. Outline defines a two-dimensional shape. Contour lines record boundaries and define more specifically what shapes represent. In this particular piece, we have outline, which is over here, which separates the text from this image. Implied line, which we'll be talking about in just a minute. The implication that this is probably water. Contour line, those lines that I like to say hug the shape. They help us to understand what exactly this object is. We see her arm here. We see some of these shapes. Get a sense of where her knee is. We see her feet down here. So contour lines record the boundaries and define more specifically what the shape represents. Line also is used in direction and visual movement. Now, a lot of people are confused when you say movement that it means something like a pinwheel, something physically moving. But that's not what it is in art. Art lines are used to move us around the image. Vertical lines seem assertive or denote strength and growth. Horizontal lines, as we see here, usually appear calm. This is a pretty easy example of that with these calm lines. The water is very calm. The boats are very calm. Interestingly, the diagonal lines are, to me, the most exciting. They are the ones that spring a piece of artwork into action. We have this oar, diagonal. We have the man's arms, diagonal. We have the 2 men. Their backs are on a diagonal. And here's that implied line. The man is looking at the boat which is closest to them. Eakins also helps to add some other action to this painting by putting a diagonal sort of sense to the clouds. Here's a better illustration of what I was saying with those strong verticals, with those strong horizontal lines, the diagonals. Implied lines I referred to a little earlier. Dotted lines, directional cues such as a finger pointing, or as I pointed out in the other slide, the man's eyes looking, and we connected that to the boat in the foreground. Creating a line of sight are examples of implied line in action. This is a very good example. All these bodies, our eye visually, our gestalt, visually puts all this together. All the energy in this picture is going towards this man. They're trying to wave down a rescue ship where you can see over here. Unfortunately, their ship, their raft, is being pushed in the wrong direction, is being pushed away from the rescue ship. This isn't just a painting. This is something that is of historic proportions, but it's an actual event, not of heroes or heroism. This is something today that might appear on CNN. It depicts a moment from the aftermath of the wreck of the French naval frigate Medusa, which ran aground off the coast of Africa on July 5th, 1816. The ship held nearly 400 people, including the new governor of Senegal and his soldiers, and 160 crew members. The 50-year-old captain, who had not been to sea in 25 years and had never commanded a ship, was in charge. The event became an international scandal because its cause was blamed on the incompetence of the French captain, who was perceived to be acting under the authority of the recently restored French monarchy. The captain, wanting to make good time, stuck close to the African shoreline and quickly outpaced the other ships. Unfortunately, he was too close to the score and inevitably hit a sandbar. The crew came to him and wanted to throw overboard extra weight in hoping of raising the ship out of the muck and floating out with the tide. But the captain wouldn't allow the crew to get rid of his constituents back in France. Eventually, everybody was forced to abandon ship. The wealthy and the well-connected were given a space on the lifeboats, while the rest, 149 people, were forced onto a makeshift raft, which was tied by a rope to one of the lifeboats. At some point, the raft was either intentionally or accidentally cut loose. What followed was a nightmare. Only 15 people of the original 149 survived. But in 13 days before the rescue, they endured starvation, dehydration, and cannibalism. Of the 15, 5 of them died shortly after their rescue. The event fascinated the young artist and knew that the uncommissioned work would draw public interest and launch his career as an artist. Before he began work on the final painting, he did research and produced many preliminary sketches. He interviewed 2 of the survivors and had the actual carpenter reconstruct the raft in his studio. He was so obsessed that he found a place to live across from the hospital where the survivors were being treated, where he could view firsthand the color and texture of the flesh of the dying and the dead. It is said that he stole 2 arms from the morgue to watch how the flesh changes color as it decays. The painting is largely sympathetic to the men on the raft, this anti-imperialism adopted by the 2 survivors. Derek Holt's abolitionist sympathies are evident in his placement of the black man at the pinnacle of the composition, which would have been controversial at the time. You can see that here with that implied line. We start here with the man half off of the ship, and then we have this line of people trying to wave down the rescue ship. And at the cross, is this African man. As the artist had anticipated, the painting proved highly controversial, and its first appearance in the 1819 Paris Salon attracting a passionate praise and condemnation in equal measure. One critic said, "The raft of Medusa conveys fallacy and hope, pointless suffering, and at the worst, the basic human condition to survive, which superseded all moral conviction and plunged civilized man into barbarism." Although he received a gold medal for the work, it was not chosen to hang in the Louvre, which at the time was the national collection. Depressed, Géricault retreated to the countryside, collapsed from exhaustion. His work found no buyer, so it was taken off the stretcher bars and rolled up and stored in a friend's studio. In 1820, it was exhibited in London to coincide with the anti-slavery agitation and had over 40,000 visitors. 1824, 4 years later, he dies at the very young age of 32, after which the Louvre purchased it from his heirs. How ironic. Some questions that I think we need to talk about next time we meet was, there was cannibalism. Some of the things to think about before we meet is put yourself in the painting. What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? You can see on the left side, a huge wave is about to engulf them. And looking at the sail, you can see that they are going in the wrong direction to be saved. Why are they hugging the coast of Africa? Why didn't they swim to shore? How long did it take the ship to break apart and sink? How much time did they have? You can see in the painting they don't have a lot of rations. Why wasn't the raft built better? There was cannibalism. At what point does survival trump morals? Starve or eat someone who has died? These are some of the things I want you to think about. So have some answers prepared. Have some thoughts ready to answer those questions.